Hi, it's Michael Hyatt. We're at the Chick-fil-A LeaderCast. We're backstage live with Dr. Ben Carson. What an honor to meet you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate
Nice
you
to be here.
being. You were raised by a single mom
Yes.
in poverty, and now you're a neurosurgeon, world-renowned in that field. Tell us a little bit about the story. How did you get from there to there?
Well, I was a terrible student.
Really?
Yes.
Say that again.
I was a terrible student.
There's hope.
I was the kind of student that everybody liked to have in their class, all the kids, because I was known as the safety net. Nobody had to worry about getting the lowest mark on a test as long as I was
So
there.
you were the other end of the bell curve.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, my mother was out working 2 to 3 jobs at a time. My parents got divorced early on after she discovered that her husband was a bigamist. And, she didn't want to be on welfare, so she was out working all the time. And, my brother and I was just kind of, whatever. We didn't really take school that seriously and didn't think we were that smart anyway. But one of the things that she noticed in the places where she worked as a domestic is that wealthy people read a lot of books, and they didn't spend a lot of time watching television. So she prayed and asked for wisdom and came home with this ideal: off with the TV, out with the books.
And you were really excited about that,
We
I'm sure.
we were thrilled.
Not.
Exactly. In fact, we thought that was child abuse. But she said, we had to read 2 books apiece from the Detroit Public Library and submit to her written book reports.
Really?
Which she couldn't read, but we didn't know that. And she put little check marks and underline and stuff. But, after a few weeks, I actually began to enjoy reading the books. We were desperately poor, but between the covers of those books, I could go anywhere. I could be anybody. I could do anything. I began to know stuff that nobody else knew. And within the space of a year and a half, I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class. And
You're like a walking advertisement for reading. As a publisher, I just want you to know I appreciate that.
well, I want you to notice on my tie, there are books.
Love it.
I actually designed this tie.
Did you really?
I did.
Are those for sale anywhere?
You can get them at Joseph A. Bank.
Okay.
And it
I'm gonna look
says
for one.
Benjamin
Look, it's got
Carson,
your name
MD.
on it.
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic.
But because, books meant all the world to me. And, we put book reading rooms in schools now, my wife and I. It's part of our scholarship program.
Because it's so transformative.
We opened 6 reading rooms in Indianapolis this
Wow.
week. But they're places where kids go, and they get points for the number of books they read or the amount of time they spend, and they can trade those in for prizes. In the beginning, they do it for the prizes, but it doesn't take long before that translates into much better academic performance.
bet.
And what we're looking at is the fact that 70 to 80% of high school dropouts are functionally illiterate. So if we can truncate that way downstream, then we're not going to have a problem upstream. And we have to start thinking way ahead.
How long did it take from the time you started reading and your mom imposed that program on you and your brother before your academic performance began to improve?
Well, the improvement started immediately, but
Really?
it took a year and a half for me to reach the top of the class.
Did you begin to think of yourself differently?
Oh, absolutely. When I thought I was stupid, I acted like a stupid person. I don't need to listen to those people. They don't know what they're talking about. And that's the way you achieve. And when I thought I was smart, I'm saying, I'm in school, and the teachers think this is important. Therefore, if I learn not only this, but go a step beyond, I will be even more valuable.
Fantastic.
I began to think that way. I began to, after school, go downtown to the university, do a lot of reading there, got involved with some of the laboratories there, started going to the Detroit Institute of Arts, roamed through those galleries until I knew every painting, who painted it. Went to some of the industries, found out what kind of programs they had, got involved in the forensics contest, learning how to express yourself. All kinds of things that one probably wouldn't normally expect from a kid in an inner city high school in Detroit, but it was because of the reading that, I began to see that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you.
Wow.
So don't wait for somebody else to sort of like grab you and say, do this and do this. It's all right there.
Are there some books from your childhood that just kind of stand out as high water marks?
Yeah, well, the very first book that I read, Chip the Dam Builder, that was a great book. It's about a beaver. I learned all about aspen and saplings, but
Leadership book. That's good.
but Booker T. Washington's autobiography, Up From Slavery, that had an impact on me because he was born a slave. Illegal to read, yet he taught himself to read, read everything in sight, became an advisor to 2 presidents.
Wow.
I just said, whoa. And then the story of Joseph in the Bible was one of my particular favorites,
too.
because he's sold into slavery. Does he say, bummer, my own brother sold me into slavery?
Yeah.
No, he says, if I'm going to be a slave, I'll be the best slave there is.
Hmm.
He ends up overseeing Potiphar's household, the captain of the Egyptian guard. And then Potiphar's wife sees him, wants to engage in some hanky-panky, but he has principles. She tells a lie on him. He ends up in jail. Does he say, bummer, you know, I'm living up to the best of my values and principles, I end up in jail? No, he says, if I'm going to be a prisoner, I'll be the best prisoner there is. Ends up with a responsible position in prison, begins interpreting dreams, ends up as the prime minister of the #1 nation in the world at that time. And what those stories said to me is that, you know, you can do anything you want to do.
Hmm.
You got to put the effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be ready. But, you know, don't sit there and bemoan the fact that things aren't going well at that time. You know, just use that circumstance to get where you want to go.
Make a difference.
Absolutely.
How'd you get interested in medicine?
Well, you know, it was the only career that I was ever interested in.
Really?
Yeah. You know, I used to listen to the mission stories in church, and they frequently featured missionary doctors.
Hmm.
And it just seemed so exciting, you know. Wow, you know, great personal sacrifice all over the world doing great things. And, you know, it changed over the course of time from missionary doctor to psychiatrist, cardiothoracic surgeon to neurosurgeon. But it was always something in medicine.
Hmm. What was it about the brain that caused you to specialize in that particular field?
Well, you know, we know so little about the brain,
Still?
even now. In fact, the more we know, the less we know.
Really?
The human brain is just the most fascinating organ system imaginable.
Hmm.
Billions and billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of interconnections, remembers every single thing you have ever seen, everything you've ever heard. You know,
You may not be able to access it. At least that's what I'm finding as I'm getting older. But
well, if I were to make a little burr hole right here and place, you know, a certain type of electrode into your hippocampus and stimulate, you would be able to quote back for me verbatim a book you read when you were in the 4th grade. It's all there.
that is incredible. So could we do that this afternoon?
Well, you know, there are certain types of neurosurgical procedures that are being worked on right now. Initially, you know, it was for movement disorders and some work on helping people with Alzheimer's. And it was discovered
By
that,
accident.
yeah, that we can actually improve people's memories significantly. So
I like this.
there's work being done on that right now.
Is there any part of this, you know, as we kind of speed forward with our technological advances and the medical breakthroughs that concern you or make you wonder if our moral framework is keeping up with it?
Well, you know, not so much in medicine, but I do worry about our moral framework in general
I do too.
as a nation, because, you know, where does morality come from? And, you know, all of a sudden God's become politically incorrect. So, you know, what is the basis of your morals if you have no, you know, pillar upon which to base them?
Yeah.
And once everything is of equal value, very much like the great philosophers of the Roman Empire dictated before their fall, you really have no bearings, you have no identity. And when you have no identity, without a vision, the people perish.
You know, for probably 150, maybe 200 years, there's been this controversy in the West between science and faith, and are they compatible? Are they two different realms? How do you think about that yourself?
Well, I think they're very compatible, quite frankly. A friend of mine, Dr. Francis Collins, who's the head of the NIH now, of course, and is responsible for the Human Genome Project. So one of the world's greatest scientists. You know, when he entered graduate school, he was an atheist. And as he began to know more and more, he said, this is no accident.
Yeah.
So he is now a very faithful Christian believer. But no, I don't believe there's incompatibility. Now, what does happen is a lot of people tend to dig themselves into their corners and snipe at everybody else, and it's
So
my
true.
way or the highway type of thing. But I think there are lots of different ways to look at things. For instance, natural selection. When Darwin went to the Galapagos Islands and saw the finches with the big beaks and said that they're different than finches anywhere else in the world, so this is a sign of evolution. Well, that's a fair leap to take. What in fact had happened is 3 years before he got there, there was a great drought in the Galapagos. The only finches that were able to survive were the ones with thick beaks that could break open the seedlings, extract the nutrition, breed, pass that characteristic on. Now, does that mean that it was evolving into another species? Well, if you're a hardcore Darwinist, yes, that's what it means. But if you're a person who believes that God created things, and recognizing that God is an incredibly intelligent designer, he would give his creatures the ability to adapt to their environment, because he wouldn't want to start over every 50 years. So that, to me, is a sign of a very intelligent creator, not a sign of evolution. And, Darwin said that his theory would rise or fall on the fact that they would be able to lay out in a line, a mile long, all the fossil remains of everything from a single-cell creature right up to man. And you'd be able to see the evolution. He said right now they couldn't do it during his time because they weren't geologically sophisticated. But in 50 to 100 years, it would be a slam dunk. And if it wasn't that, then that would throw cold water on his theory. And of course, we have not found them. Because they don't exist. It's as simple as that. There's never been evidence of one species turning into another species. There is certainly evidence of things adapting within the species.
Okay, one last question I want to ask, just because I'm fascinated by this. But with regard to brain science, where will we be 20 years from now, do you think? What will be possible?
Well, it's actually very exciting because, when I look at neurosurgery, it is a different specialty today than it was when I entered. And in 20 years from now, it will be a very different specialty. Robots will play a major role in neurosurgery. We'll be able to look into the depths through a very, very small opening with incredible lenses and use very fine instruments to weave our way through vessels without disturbing them and causing them to go in a spasm, find a target area, destroy something that needs to be destroyed, place something that needs to be placed, all on a screen, and without actually a human hand touching the brain. And the imaging capabilities are just phenomenal. One of the last sets of conjoined twins that I operated on, we were able to use a virtual workstation, which allows us to merge the MRI, the CAT scan, the angiograms into a 3D image, put on goggles, actually study it. You can pick a vessel if you want, zoom in on it, actually go inside of it if you want to, like Fantastic Voyage, figure out all the anatomical structures and relationships. These are just marvelous things, as well as learning the functions of the brain with PET scanners and functional MRIs. We'll be able to actually tell what a person's thinking. So they'll put these things up in stores. If somebody's coming in planning to steal something, it'll alert security. So I advise people to start thinking clean, pure thoughts now.
God already knows. Can I get an Apple computer implanted in my brain? Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely.
It's a delight. Fascinating. I
My
could talk to you
pleasure.
for hours.
Thank you.
Good to meet you. We'll be back soon.